Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about building a fortress. But, not with stone and mortar. We're talking code, strategy. We're diving deep into cybersecurity architecture. So let's start with a really important question for you. Think about your digital life. Is it a fortress? Or is it more like a sandcastle, just waiting for the tide to come in? Seriously, how well are we actually protecting our most valuable stuff online? That's exactly what we're going to unpack. All right, before we start putting up walls and digging moats, we've got to figure something out. What are we really protecting here? What's the treasure inside this fortress we're trying to build?
It's simple, really. The treasure, it's your data. Think about it. In today's world, the most valuable thing isn't gold, it's information. And we're not just talking about big company secrets. We're talking about your personal info, your identity. That's the treasure, and keeping it safe is the whole point of this.
So when we talk about protecting data, what does that even mean? Well, it really boils down to three main goals. It's often called the CIA triad, and it's like a three-legged stool for security. First, you've got confidentiality. Pretty straightforward, right? Only the right people get to see the data. Then there's integrity. This is all about making sure the data is accurate and that no one has messed with it. And finally, availability. This one's huge. Your data is no good if you can't get to it when you need it. Every single security control we'll talk about is trying to balance these three things.
Okay, so we know what we're protecting, but how we approach that protection? Well, that's maybe the biggest decision you can make. Is security going to be part of the original blueprint, or is it something you just kind of slap on at the end?
And that blueprint, that's what we call cybersecurity architecture. You can think of it as the master plan for your entire digital fortress. See, it's not about just going out and buying some fancy security software. No way. It's a comprehensive strategy that maps out exactly where your walls, your gates, and your guards need to be before a single line of code is even written. It's all about planning ahead.
And this slide really gets to the heart of it. There are two totally different mindsets here. On one side, you've got secure by design. That's proactive. It's about weaving security into the very fabric of a system right from the beginning. And on the other side, security is an afterthought. That's reactive. It's like building a whole car and then trying to bolt on some armor plates later. It's clumsy, it's way more expensive, and you just know it's going to have weak spots. Going the proactive route, that means a more resilient system, and honestly, it's so much cheaper in the long run.
And this really sums it all up. The big takeaway is that you can't treat security like a feature you just add on later. It's not an app you install. For a system to be truly secure, that thinking has to be there from day one. It's a fundamental part of the design, not some optional extra.
All right, so we've got our blueprint, we're thinking proactively. Now it's time for the fun part. Let's start building this digital fortress, layer by layer.
Now, the core strategy here is something called defense in depth. This is absolutely crucial. The idea is you never, ever rely on just one single defense. No giant wall is foolproof, right? Any single thing can fail. So instead, you build layers. You create multiple different types of defenses so that if an attacker manages to get past one, boom, they hit another one and another one after that. So what's the first layer? Well, think of it as the moat around the castle. In networking, we call this a demilitarized zone, or a DMZ. It's basically a small, separate network that sits between the wild, untrusted internet and your safe internal network. This is where you stick things that have to face the public, like your website. That way, if it gets attacked, the bad guys are just stuck in the moat. They haven't actually gotten into the castle itself.
Okay, so the moat is dug. Next up, the walls. And I don't just mean the outer walls. We're talking about building walls inside the fortress too. This is called network segmentation. Instead of one big, open network where everyone can get to everything, you break it up into smaller, isolated zones. That way, if someone breaks into, say, the human resources section, they're trapped there. They can't just stroll over to the finance section. It's all about containing the damage.
And how do you guard the entrances to all these different zones? Well, every gate needs a gatehouse, right? In our world, that's the firewall. It's a device that acts like a bouncer, standing at the edge of each network segment. It inspects every single piece of traffic trying to get in or out, and decides, based on a very strict set of rules, you can pass or nope, you're not getting in. It's the guard at the gate.
And finally, what about the keys to all these gates and doors? That brings us to access controls. The guiding philosophy here is called the principle of least privilege. It's a really simple but powerful idea. You only give people the absolute minimum access they need to do their job and nothing more. The reception desk doesn't get the key to the treasury, right? Same idea. Their computer account shouldn't have access to critical financial servers. Give out as few keys as possible.
Okay, this whole fortress model is great, it's classic, it works, but what happens when the battlefield changes? What happens when your fortress doesn't even have clear borders anymore? With people working from anywhere and data living up in the cloud?
When you move to the cloud, you have to understand something called the shared responsibility model. It's a super important distinction. The cloud provider, think Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they're responsible for security of the cloud. That means the physical buildings, the servers, the networking. But you are always responsible for security in the cloud. That's your data, your user access, how you set up your applications. They secure the building, but you're still responsible for locking your own apartment door.
And man, the challenges just keep piling up. You've got remote work, which means securing connections from all over the world. You've got this explosion of IoT devices, smart cameras, sensors, you name it, many with terrible default security. And then you have modern applications built out of tons of tiny little microservices that all have to communicate securely. Every single one of these things makes the area you have to defend, what we call the attack surface, bigger and bigger.
So we've built this amazing high-tech fortress. We have firewalls, segmented networks, a solid cloud strategy. But in all this focus on the technology, it's really easy to forget the most critical, and let's be honest, the most unpredictable part of the whole system.
So what do you think? What's the biggest threat to any fortress? Is it some powerful new weapon, a really clever attacker, or is it a mistake in the blueprints?
Well, the answer, pretty much every single time, is the people inside. The human element is, hands down, the most common vulnerability that attackers go after. Your fortress, no matter how well it's built, is only as strong as the people holding the keys. Because at the end of the day, all the amazing tech in the world can be completely bypassed if one person clicks on a malicious link in an email, or if they reuse a weak password, or even if they just make an honest mistake. And that's why technology alone is never, ever the whole answer. You have to build a strong security culture. That means training, awareness, and making sure everyone understands they have a role to play. That's just as vital as any firewall.
And that really brings us to the final, most important point. A digital fortress is never finished. It's not a project you complete, it's a living thing that you have to constantly maintain, test, and adapt to new threats. So the real question you should be asking isn't if your fortress has a weak spot, it's what is it? And what are you going to do about it? Thanks for joining this explainer.